The morning sun gleamed over New York City, but its warmth couldn't chase away the sharp chill in the air, the kind that slipped through even the most luxurious restaurant windows. The lunch hour had just begun when an elderly man quietly pushed open the glass doors of Lame's own door, an elite restaurant admired for its marble floors, golden chandeliers, and aura of refinement. He wore a worn-out brown coat that had clearly seen better days. His shoes were scuffed, his hat slightly crushed, and his face, etched with years of wisdom, carried a calm serenity. To those watching, he looked like just another old man out of place, someone who didn't belong among the city's elite. No one knew that this quiet stranger was a Japanese billionaire, Mr. Kenji Takahiro, a man who had built an empire on humility, respect, and kindness. If you believe compassion and second chances can still change the world, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the Stories of Kindness channel, where true stories remind us that humanity still matters. The old man made his way to a corner table by the window, each step slow, careful, as though he was walking through memories. He smiled politely at the hostess, but she hesitated. Dressed in designer black and trained to spot wealthy guests, she gave him one quick look and silently judged. He probably couldn't afford to be there. Still, maintaining professional courtesy, she led him to a quiet corner and placed a menu before him without a word. He sat there, hands folded, observing the lively room with quiet curiosity rather than judgment. Around him, laughter echoed from business meetings, couples' conversations, and tourists snapping photos of their meals. But no one paid him a second glance. He tried to catch a waiter's attention, but each one passed as if he were invisible. Minutes turned to half an hour. His glass of water stayed empty, his menu untouched, yet he remained still, patient, composed. It wasn't helplessness, it was the grace of someone long accustomed to being underestimated. What no one knew was that Mr. Takahiro wasn't in America for business. He had come for something far more personal. Decades ago, when he was a young engineer studying abroad, he'd fallen deeply in love with a woman from New York. They had shared dreams, laughter, and letters that crossed oceans. Life, however, had separated them. Though he went on to build a vast fortune, her memory lingered in every quiet corner of his heart. Now, a widower, he had returned, hoping to revisit the places where they had once walked together. As the hours passed, whispers spread among the diners. Some thought he was lost. Others assumed he was waiting for someone who would never arrive. The staff exchanged uncertain glances, debating whether to ask him to leave. That's when Emily noticed him. A young waitress new to the job, Emily worked long hours to support her mother's medical bills and her younger brother's education. Exhausted, but still guided by kindness, she watched as the man nodded politely to every passing waiter. Each time ignored, something stirred in her heart. She remembered how her late father, who once worked in Japan, would bow slightly whenever he thanked someone. Without hesitation, she walked over, her eyes warm and gentle. When the man looked up, she smiled and bowed slightly. "Konnichiwa," she said softly. "Ohayo gozaimasu." "Hello, how are you?" The restaurant seemed to fall silent. The old man's eyes widened in surprise, then glistened with emotion. A tremor passed through his lips before he smiled, a tender, grateful smile. In a voice trembling with feeling, he replied in Japanese, asking her name. Emily bowed again, replying in halting but sincere Japanese that she had studied a little in school and admired the culture deeply. In that instant, something passed between them. An unspoken understanding, a bridge of respect that needed no translation. Emily took his order with care, ensuring every detail was perfect. She poured his water herself, straightened his napkin, and brought him a cup of green tea instead of coffee, whispering that she remembered Japanese guests preferred it. The old man clasped his hands and bowed his head slightly before taking a sip. It was such a simple act, yet in that moment, he felt truly seen, not as a billionaire, but as a human being. The quiet exchange didn't go unnoticed. Conversations in the restaurant faded as others watched the gentle connection between them. Guilt crept over those who had ignored him. The manager, overhearing fragments of their conversation, suddenly realized who the man might be. When the meal ended, the old man asked for the check. The manager rushed over, flustered and apologetic, insisting the meal was on the house. The old man shook his head. "No," he said softly, his English careful but firm. "Respect should never be free." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small black card, one possessed only by the world's elite, and handed it to Emily, along with a golden business card. She blinked in confusion, then gasped as she read the name, Kenji Takahiro. "Of the Takahiro Group," she whispered. The manager nearly dropped his tray. Mr. Takahiro smiled faintly. "Kindness," he said, "is the most expensive thing in the world, but you gave it freely. Thank you. He bowed deeply, then left, his steps light and peaceful. The next morning, Emily arrived at work to find the restaurant buzzing. A national newspaper had published a story about a Japanese billionaire who had dined anonymously, praising the kindness of a single waitress who had treated him with respect when no one else did. An envelope waited for Emily. Inside was a handwritten letter and a sponsorship offer. Mr. Takahiro would fund her education and support her family. It was his way of honoring the spirit of kindness that reminded him of someone he had once loved. Tears welled in her eyes as she read his note. For Emily, it wasn't the money that mattered. It was the reminder that small acts of kindness, given freely, can transform lives in unimaginable ways. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Stories of Kindness, where we keep spreading stories that renew faith in humanity. Before we end, tell us, what's the smallest act of kindness someone once did for you that you'll never forget? Share it in the comments below. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the city skyline, Emily stood by the same window where Mr. Takahiro had sat, her reflection glowing in the golden light. And somewhere across the ocean, an old man smiled while sipping his tea, grateful that in a world rushing past, one waitress remembered that kindness still speaks every language. Because in the end, kindness is the truest form of wealth,